to bench press more. Maybe you got to grow strength in your shoulders. Maybe you got to spend a little more time on the tricep pull downs. Maybe it's not, I got to just bench press more. No, I got to focus on what are the other areas of my body that need improvement. What are the other areas I got to spend a little more attention on to improve my overall goals.
It's all about how in 2020 we're going to make the world a better place than we found it.
Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the All About How podcast. You're watching episode 4 today. Super excited to share it to you. I want to talk about a couple things first. Number one, I realized that the first episode of this podcast, the video one that's on YouTube, this mic wasn't on. Like, what? It was plugged in, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. So there was that. The other thing I noticed is I say that being said quite a lot. It's funny watching it back. I recorded another video that's going to be posted here soon that is about business and business stuff that's going on through the week. Business Brood. If you're not watching that series, you got to go check it out. Podcast and video. It'll be linked. But the amount of times I had to cut out that being said, or all that to say, oh my gosh. If I kept it as is and you were playing a drinking game, you're not getting through it. You're going to drop over and be in a very bad place. That's one hell of a hangover. Anyway, I'm not even getting into that right now. What we're talking about today is goal setting. If you saw my last video, my 20-minute tirade on my life's journey, why you need to make radical change, all that kind of stuff, go check that out. I think it's valuable. That'll be linked below as well. But today we're talking about goals for 2020. I'm going to talk about my goals a little bit, but I also want to talk about something that I want to make sure we're not forgetting in pursuit of those goals. So, first thing we're going to talk about is my goals. That was a loud bang. I apologize for that. So, if you're listening on the podcast, what's up? Glad to have you here. If you're looking on YouTube, how you doing? Good to see you, or good. I'm glad you're watching. I can't see. You get my point. Okay, so I'm opening up a notebook here for those of you on the podcast. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm going to show you this really quick. These are my goals for 2020, basically. It's my year kind of on one page, or 2 pages technically. And all these goals are kind of broken down. And for those of you on the podcast, I'll read it here. We have financial education, that's financial, education, fitness, personal growth, and business. So what I do is I broke it down into those categories. Oh, also investing, that's kind of hidden down there. But I broke it up into those categories, and then I set out my goals that I want to achieve in those categories. Then I go through each of those categories and I circle the most important goals. So let me break this down for you here. I'm going to talk about my personal growth. Here are my goals. I'm just going to list them really quickly. Read a book a week. Read 3 books a month. Read a chapter a day. Now, really quick, the reason I did it that way is because some books are going to be longer than others. But if I read a chapter a day, I'm doing what I need to do. Learn the goings-on of business. You're watching Business Brood. That's how I'm achieving that goal. We're talking about business stuff every week. Stay up to date on politics. That's just something that I need to do. I really don't know enough of what's going on. Be nicer. Be more assertive, which you might seem to be counterintuitive to each other, but you can be assertive and still be nice. So that's what I want to work on there. I don't by all any means think I'm a mean person, but I think we can always work to be nicer, and if we are nicer, we're making the world a better place. So that's my motto. You get that. Next is seek true answers in all things. Learn as much financial literacy, financial knowledge as possible. Be a better boyfriend, be a better brother, be a better son, be a better friend. All of those types of things, because I think we can always improve. But my most important goal in that category is be radically open-minded. Now, we're going to be talking about this book a little bit today. Principles by Ray Dalio. I'm in the middle of it. The review is going to be coming soon, probably sometime in 2 weeks. So come back for it. If you don't want to wait or you want to read it before the review, this will be linked below. It's an affiliate link. If you do use it, I greatly appreciate your business and help and support the podcast. So Principles by Ray Dalio, recommend it highly. Linked below. So check that out. But the reason I want to reference that is because the thing that he talks a lot about in that book is being radically open-minded and seeking the truth. Basically understanding the principle of we are all biased. We all have biases, so to speak. And we can't always assume that we're seeing every decision, every situation objectively. And what we need to do is seek many answers, determine which of those answers to be true, even if those truthful answers don't necessarily align with what we believed or what we thought, but being radically open-minded enough to understand that the truth is more important than our ego. That's what I'm going to leave it at right now for principles. However, the reason that's the most important part in my personal growth section is because let's kind of look at it a little bit here. Want to be a better boyfriend, brother, son, friend, okay? If I'm radically open-minded, you have disagreements with people, you have arguments and all that kind of stuff. If I'm radically open-minded, I can now make sure that I'm not just having an argument with somebody for the sake of having an argument or for the sake of being quote-unquote right. By being radically open-minded, I can listen to what people have to say and possibly prevent arguments from happening because I'm just listening rather than listening to respond. I'm listening to understand instead of listening to respond. I'll put it that way. Let's take a look at here. Learn the goings-on of business, stay up to date on politics. By being radically open-minded, I can now look at what's going on in business, looking at what's going on in politics, look at everybody's different opinion on those events, and help draw my own opinions because I'm not worried about being quote-unquote right. I'm worried about, let me rephrase that. I'm not worried about my own personal thoughts being right. I'm worried about being actually correct based on the information that I can find and bring to the surface. We look at something here. Be nicer, be more assertive, seek true answers, and learn as much financial knowledge as possible. Being nice and assertive, if I'm radically open-minded, I know when to be, complacent and understand and yes ma'am, yes sir, but also being radically open-minded, I know when no, I need to push this a little bit because it's the truth. I have enough backing here, enough evidence to support my idea. And we talk about seek true answers, learn as much financial knowledge as possible. Well, seeking true answers is just being open-minded. It's not worrying about being right, it's worrying about being correct, if you understand what I mean there. So that's just like one example. You get my idea for what I'm saying. And what I did is now, once I have these goals laid out, I'm gonna flip the page, a couple pages here. I then go and dedicate an entire page to each goal. So right here we have education, and on this page we have fitness. Also, if you're listening on the podcast and you wanna see this, hop on over to YouTube, that'll be linked. And then what I do is I basically put down my most important goal in that category. So for example, with fitness, it's put on 7 pounds of gains, gains train to Swoleville. And then what I do is I list down the steps that are going to help me achieve that goal. So one thing that Ray Dalio talks about in his book Principles is he's talking about not only setting a goal, but then developing the plan to get there. So he says the first thing you got to do is set the goal. Don't worry about the plan. Don't worry about how you're going to get there until the goal is set. And if the goal seems achievable, it's not worthwhile of a goal. So set the goal, then worry about the plan. So I set my goals on that last page, and now I'm worrying about the plan. And you can see here, if I just flip, I've gone ahead, I've done it for my personal goals, I've done it for my investing goals, and then I have to go on and do my financial and business goals later today. So really what that allows me to do is it allows me not only to have my goal, but allows me to then go back throughout the course of the year, check my progress, and see where I am on that achievement level and things like that. But what are we talking about today as far as that applying to everyone watching or listening? Now, first of all, I would say it's a great way to set your goals. Get yourself a notebook, set all the goals for the different categories that you want to improve on in life, and then go through and make the plan to achieve either each one of those goals or, like I do, the biggest goal in that category. That's just going to help you. And I think you need to set goals because I find myself having a whole bunch of goals, but then doing things that may be counterintuitive to the goal just for the simple fact that I don't remember that I set that goal. But now that they're all written down, I can weigh my decisions on how they affect each of the individual goals that I want to achieve. For example, let's say you want to, I need to get more hours so I'm eligible for the college program at work, for example. Let's use that example. But I don't take this coverage shift for X, Y, or Z reason. Well, that's not helping me achieve my goal of getting the required hours for college. So I need to keep that in mind when I'm deciding whether or not I can take a shift and whether or not I need to weigh the other things I need to do that day based upon also then covering a shift. So that's all the kind of stuff you got to think about in setting the goals. And now that goal is written down, I can weigh all of my decisions based on how they affect my goals. And I just don't think that's possible when you are not writing them down because it's just so hard to keep track of it in your head. You know what I mean? There's so much we're dealing with in a day. You don't need to worry about having everything on those pages up in your head at all times. Just look back at the piece of paper. It's so much easier, so much simpler. But anyway, so I'm at work the other day, okay? And I get off my shift, and a good friend of mine who I've met through work, he's a regular customer, and I'm gonna keep his name private for now, just for his privacy. And I sat down with him, and we'll call him Jake, right? I sat down with Jake, and Jake and we talked about these goals because he saw me working on them on my break, and he's like, "Hey, what's all this about? I'm interested. Let's talk about them." And Jake is currently writing a book, and Jake's big goal for this book is to have that book published by the end of the year. And I've, spent a lot of time talking to Jake. We bounce ideas off each other. It's been a really incredible process, and eventually, with his permission, I want to bring him on the show and have you listen to what he has to say because he's doing some really incredible stuff. So I sat down with him and we talked about these goals. And the one thing he was telling me was like, the one thing that we have to keep in mind is that achieving the goal is incredibly important. That's obviously why we set the goals. But what's also sometimes just as important is the person that we become in the process of chasing and achieving those goals. And I thought about that and I'm like, wow. That's actually pretty profound. And I thought about some examples that I want to share here because I believe in that so much. Let's say that you want to become fit, okay? So what that means is you're not going to be eating sweets. You're not going to be getting that chocolate cake, that ice cream. You're not going to be getting that venti coffee. And maybe you're not going out for food as much. You're not getting pizza with the boys. You're not grabbing a burger with somebody. And those are all things that need to kind of happen, right? Because you can't just keep doing what you're doing and expect things to change. You have to be willing to make adjustments to the way that you're living to achieve what you want to live. That being said, let's say you want to become fit, all right? So you cut all that stuff completely out of your life. You get fit, but now you're miserable. You're cold all the time. You're hungry. You're irritable. You're mad. You start taking that out on the people around you. It can be argued that in doing so, we haven't grown as people because we've essentially given up excellence in one area. Let's say that you were an excellent, friend, for example, or an excellent coworker. But now because you're fit, you're tired all the time. So your work slacks, you're irritable around your friends, you don't got time for their stuff. And now all of a sudden, hey, you've basically given up the excellence as a friend, excellence as an entrepreneur, a worker, whatever position you're in, just to be fit. So you haven't grown as a person, you've just shifted where your excellence is. Another example is, let's say you want to save more money. Yes, you are going to have to cut back your spending. You can't go out for as much food. You can't spend as much on maybe your daily living. Maybe you shouldn't buy that expensive car. Maybe you got to downgrade your house. But that being said, you can't neglect the financial responsibilities and obligations you have based on the position you have in life. So let's say you want to save a lot of money and you want to become financially independent, but in the short term, you start basically just working like 80 hours a week at your job, not your business, because I would say the ROI there is significantly different. So let's say you start working 80 hours a week at your job. Now you're never home to see the family, take care of the kids, whatever it is you got to do. So now you've made more money, but have you given up the excellence as a parent in this case, for example? I'm not a parent. I'm not saying and making any judgment on what any parents out there listening will do. You know better than I do. I'm not in that position. I'm just giving that as a food for thought and an example. I think it's an easy one for a lot of us to understand. And if you are a parent, maybe you've been in that position. Maybe you can't spend as much time at home because you have to work. And now doing that intentionally, though, week in and week out, you got to think, are you giving up excellence in one place for excellence in another? So if we look at goals and the pursuit of goals as what's more important, the person you become in pursuit of those goals, the person that would be able to be more financially responsible, be more financially independent, create more streams of income while still being able to take care of their family, now instead of just moving laterally along the chart, you're moving up. Right? You are moving, not only growing your financial stability, but you're growing your responsibility as a parent, you're growing and everything else, right? So you're growing as a human, you're moving this way diagonally up the graph, not just laterally and not just vertically. Because if you just improve as a parent, for example, okay, you're moving this way, you're not improving your financial situation. If you just improve your financial situation, but don't improve yourself as a parent, or maybe you even decrease as a parent and your graph becomes negative, again, that's not the growth you're looking at. But if you find the intermediate and kind of the happy trade-off, you can say it's the point just before diminishing returns of both of those goals, both of those axes. Then you move up, positively in the middle of them. And now all of a sudden you are making growth and actually growing as a person. And that's something that I really had to stop and think about. Like, okay, these are the goals I want to set. These are the goals I'm going to achieve. But what do I need to prevent from happening in the process? And how do I need to grow as a person to achieve those goals? And I think about when we think about it that way, you may fall short of your goal, but you may improve as a person in the process that sets you up in a better position to then go and continue to try and achieve that goal. Because overall, what's happening is you're rounding the character, you're growing the character rather than just putting a spike on the circle, so to speak. You're growing overall, you're increasing your circumference rather than just, doing this. And if you're watching the video, you get it. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm like pointing like off of a circle. You get my point. You're growing the whole individual. And I think that's more important than just achieving the goals individually. Not to say that the achievement is anything to be looked down upon. That's arguably one of the most important points. Try that. Try writing down the goals and just working with that for a month. If you don't want to do it for the whole year, fine. Set something that you want to do this month, this week even. Write down that goal, set up the plan to get there, and do that, follow that for a week and see, hey, maybe I actually got it because I finally had a plan and I achieved the steps in that plan. And then also keep in mind, maybe what I need to achieve this goal isn't some materialistic change. It isn't some physical change. I just have to change kind of how I am as a person. Maybe, like for example, you want to bench press more. Maybe you got to grow strength in your shoulders. Maybe you got to spend a little more time on the tricep pull downs. Maybe it's not, I got to just bench press more. No, I got to focus on what are the other areas of my body that need improvement. What are the other areas I got to spend a little more attention on to improve my overall goals? So maybe you got to spend more time on being a little bit more radically open-minded, and that's what's going to help you grow financially, not just working more to save more money. I hope that point's coming across to you. I actually feel pretty strongly about it. I like what that whole conversation with that individual taught me. And it's like there's just things. You sit down with one conversation, all of a sudden your perspective just widens immediately from one conversation. And I think that coupled with Ray Dalio's book Principles, again, pick this up. The review is coming soon. They are just invaluable. And if you just focus on those couple things, I think for the rest of this year, you'll see where I am at the end of this year. That's why I'm documenting. That's why I'm so excited for this to be documentation, is because I want to show you how these things go, whether it's positive or negative. This is an experiment. I'm not saying that everything I'm saying is 100% right. I'm still in the process of making it, so to speak. So really, we're going to document it. We're going to show the failure. We're going to show the success. But I strongly believe, as well does Ray Dalio, who has been successful, and Jake, the person I sat down with, who has been incredibly successful in his own right, they both believe this. And I think if they're both saying it, it's probably right. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Stick tuned. I definitely wanted to get some more people on the show here soon. We're going to talk to them. I have a couple people lined up. Really excited for that, to have some interviews with people and kind of show you how other people are making it and how other people are making it work. Because it's all about how this 2020 year. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. John.au on all the platforms. This has been the AU Network, all about how. Have a very highly successful day.